April 12th, 1945. American soldiers liberate Buchenwald. Among the horrors they discover filing cabinets, punch card machines, industrial tracking systems. The logo on these machines? IBM. Made in America. Shipped to Nazi Germany. Used to organize mass killings with industrial efficiency. 3 months later, as Berlin falls, a German military truck rumbles through the ruins. Built by Ford in 1945, while American boys were dying to stop Hitler. And the fuel in the tank? Made possible by American technology, sold by Standard Oil. These companies are still here, still operating, still profitable, and they never paid for what they did. This is not a story about good versus evil. This is a story about profit versus morality. And profit won. January 30th, 1933. Adolf Hitler becomes Chancellor of Germany. The world watches in horror. Newspapers scream warnings. Diplomats condemn. Nations impose sanctions. But in the boardrooms of America's most powerful corporations, executives face a different calculation. A cold, brutal economic question. Do we abandon the German market and lose millions in revenue? Or do we stay and make a deal with the devil? Germany was the second largest economy in Europe. 60 million customers, massive industrial capacity, advanced manufacturing infrastructure. For companies like IBM, Ford, and Standard Oil, Germany was not just another market. It was a gold mine. The numbers were staggering. Germany represented 30% of IBM's European revenue, 25% of Ford's international sales. Standard Oil's partnership with IG Farben was worth hundreds of millions. Walking away meant financial disaster. Staying meant moral compromise. They chose the money, so they made their choice. They stayed. They traded. They profited. They built complex corporate structures to hide their activities. Shell companies, neutral intermediaries, Swiss subsidiaries, and when the killing began, they did not stop. They could not stop, because by then, they were not just doing business with Nazi Germany. They were essential to the Nazi war machine. Thomas J. Watson Sr., CEO of IBM, a titan of American industry. Time magazine's 1939 greatest salesman in the world. A man who understood one thing better than anyone else. Data is power. In 1933, Watson faced a business opportunity disguised as a moral dilemma. IBM's German subsidiary, Dehomag, was not just surviving under the Nazis. It was exploding with growth. Hitler's regime needed something desperately. Industrial-scale organization. The Third Reich wanted to transform Germany into the most efficient state in history. Every citizen catalogued, every resource tracked, every transaction recorded. This required technology that did not exist anywhere except one place. IBM. The IBM Hollerith machine was the most advanced data processing technology in the world. It could sort, count, and cross-reference information faster than any system ever built. In 1933, it was essentially the only computer on Earth. Here's how it worked. Each person, each transaction, each piece of data became a punch card. Holes punched in specific positions represented different data points. Column 11 might represent occupation. Column 15 might represent location. Column 22 might represent other classifications. The machine would read thousands of cards per hour, sort them by any criteria, cross-reference them, generate reports. It was revolutionary technology. And it was expensive. IBM did not sell these machines. They leased them. This was pure genius from a business perspective. A sold machine is a one-time profit. A leased machine is monthly recurring revenue. Forever. Every month, Nazi officials paid rent to IBM. Every month, IBM technicians came to service the machines. Update them, repair them, train German operators. The relationship was not transactional. It was a long-term partnership. The financial structure was brilliant. IBM New York owned the patents. Wehrmacht in Germany held the license. When war came and direct payments became illegal, IBM created IBM Geneva, a Swiss subsidiary. Technically neutral, legally separate, the money kept flowing through Switzerland. IBM New York kept collecting royalties. The machines kept running. Thomas Watson visited Germany 41 times between 1933 and 1941. 41 business trips. These were not courtesy visits. These were strategic meetings, planning sessions, expansion discussions. In 1937, Hitler awarded Watson the Grand Cross of the German Eagle, the highest honor Nazi Germany could give to a foreigner. Watson accepted it, wore it proudly, only returned it in 1939 after intense public pressure in America. But returning a medal did not stop the money. Wehrmacht expanded throughout the war. By 1939, they were not just tracking demographics. They were optimizing military logistics, train schedules, supply chain management, resource allocation. The German military ran on IBM technology. Every troop movement, every supply delivery, every rail car, all tracked with punch cards. The numbers are staggering. By 1941, Wehrmacht had over 2,000 employees. They operated in every major German city. They had installed thousands of machines across the Reich and occupied territories. Revenue from German operations, 40 million Reichsmarks per year. That is over $20 million in 1940-era currency. In today's money, that is $350 million annually. IBM made a fortune while Germany conquered Europe. When America entered the war in December 1941, IBM faced a legal crisis. Trading with the enemy was now explicitly illegal. Corporate executives could be prosecuted for treason. So IBM did what any sophisticated corporation does when facing legal problems. They hired lawyers, created plausible deniability, restructured the corporate chain. IBM Geneva became the primary entity. All contracts ran through Switzerland. All payments processed through Swiss banks. If anyone asked, IBM New York had no direct relationship with Germany. The technical truth was perfect. The moral truth was damning. The machines kept running. The payments kept flowing. And IBM kept profiting from both sides of the war. They supplied the Allies. They collected royalties from the Axis. Perfect business strategy. In 1945, when the camps were liberated, American soldiers found the machines everywhere. They saw the IBM logo on every punch card system. They understood immediately what these machines had been used for. The Army confiscated the evidence. The War Department classified it. And IBM faced no charges. Why? Because prosecuting IBM would expose how deeply American corporations had been embedded in the Nazi economy. That exposure would damage American credibility, hurt post-war business relationships, create precedents no one wanted. So they buried it. Thomas Watson retired in 1956. He died wealthy, respected, honored as one of the greatest businessmen in American history. His legacy carefully curated, his fortune intact. IBM continued dominating the computer industry for decades. The punch card systems they developed for Nazi Germany became the foundation of modern data processing. The Holocaust was industrialized by IBM technology, and that same technology built the modern digital age. They never apologized. They never acknowledged what happened. For 56 years, they remained silent. In 2001, IBM finally allowed independent researchers limited access to their archives. What they found confirmed everything. IBM knew, Watson knew, the board knew, and they made a calculated business decision. Profit over morality. Every single time. Now let me tell you about Ford. Henry Ford. The man who put America on wheels. The inventor of the assembly line. The creator of the $5 workday. An American icon. And a man who saw Nazi Germany as a business opportunity. Henry Ford's relationship with Germany was not ideological, it was financial. Germany was Ford's second-largest international market. In 1930, Ford sold 60,000 vehicles in Germany. That represented 15% of Ford's global revenue. When Hitler came to power, Ford faced the same calculation as IBM. Leave Germany and lose millions. Or stay and adapt. Ford stayed. In 1938, Ford invested heavily in a new factory complex in Cologne. Ford Werke. The facility covered over 1 million square feet. It employed 4,000 German workers. It had the capacity to produce 50,000 vehicles per year. The investment was massive, over $10 million. In 1938, money. That is 200 million in today's currency. This was not a cautious bet. This was an all-in commitment to the German market. Ford Werke produced cars and trucks for German civilians. Business was good. Revenue climbed steadily through 1938 and 39. Then war began in September 1939, and everything changed. The German government ordered Ford Werke to convert to military production. Trucks for the Wehrmacht, transport vehicles for the German army, engine components for military equipment. Ford Werke complied immediately. They had no choice. But here is the critical detail. Henry Ford and Ford executives in Dearborn never relinquished control. Through a complex structure of neutral intermediaries and Swiss holding companies, Ford maintained operational oversight of Ford Werke throughout the war. They received financial reports, production numbers, strategic updates. They knew exactly what Ford Werke was building, and they approved. By 1940, Ford Werke was one of the largest military suppliers in Germany. They produced trucks that carried German troops across Europe, transport vehicles that supplied the invasion of France, engine parts for tanks rolling into Poland. The scale was staggering. Between 1940 and 1945, Ford Werke built over 78,000 military vehicles for Nazi Germany. Every month, financial statements went from Cologne to Dearborn, profit and loss reports, balance sheets, production forecasts. Ford executives in Michigan knew every detail, and the profits were substantial. Ford Werke generated over 1.2 million Reichsmarks in profit during the war years. That is over $700,000 in 1940-era currency. 15 million in today's money. American Ford was profiting from Nazi military production, while American soldiers were dying fighting that same military. But it gets worse. Ford Werke faced a labor shortage in 1942. German men were being drafted into military service. The factories needed workers. The Nazi government provided them. Prisoners of war, forced laborers from occupied territories. People worked 16-hour shifts. Minimal food. Brutal conditions. No pay. Ford Werke used slave labor to meet production quotas. And Ford executives in Dearborn knew. Internal memos prove it. Inspection reports document it. Financial analysis included labor cost savings from forced workers. They knew, and they said nothing. In 1944, the United States Army Air Forces began systematic bombing of German industrial targets. Factories, refineries, rail yards, strategic targets critical to the Nazi war machine. On March 4, 1945, American bombers hit Cologne. The target list included Ford Werk. Heavy bombers dropped over 200 tons of explosives on the factory complex. The facility was heavily damaged. Production lines destroyed. Assembly buildings collapsed. Machinery ruined. Ford Werke filed insurance claims for the damage, over $700,000. The German government paid part of it, but Ford wanted more. After the war ended, Ford sued the United States government. Their legal argument was simple. Ford Werke was American-owned property. The bombing constituted destruction of American assets. The U.S. government owed compensation. The case went through the courts for years, and in 1953, Ford won. The U.S. government paid Ford Motor Company $1 million in compensation for bombing their factory in Nazi Germany. Let me repeat that. Ford took American taxpayer money as payment for damage to a factory that had been building military trucks for Hitler. The audacity is breathtaking. Henry Ford died in April 1947, his fortune intact, his legacy celebrated. One of America's greatest industrialists, his anti-war statements from the 1920s carefully highlighted. His 1930s relationship with Germany quietly forgotten. Ford Motor Company never apologized. They never acknowledged what Ford Werke did during the war. For 60 years, they maintained silence. In 2001, a class action lawsuit forced Ford to open their archives. Historians and lawyers examined thousands of documents. The evidence was overwhelming. Ford issued a carefully worded statement. They acknowledged Ford Werke's use of forced labor. They expressed regret. But they did not apologize. And they never paid reparations. The company is worth $100 billion today, built partly on profits from Nazi military production. Now let me tell you about Standard Oil. Standard Oil of New Jersey was the largest oil company in the world in 1930. Descended from John D. Rockefeller's original monopoly, run by executives who understood one truth above all others. Oil is power. And Germany had a problem. They had no oil. Germany had coal. Massive coal reserves in the Ruhr Valley. But modern militaries do not run on coal. Tanks need gasoline. Planes need aviation fuel. Submarines need diesel. Without oil, Germany could not wage modern war. This was Germany's greatest strategic weakness, and it created an opportunity for Standard Oil. In 1929, Standard Oil made a deal with IG Farben. IG Farben was Germany's largest chemical conglomerate. They controlled coal, rubber, dyes, pharmaceuticals, explosives. They were essentially the German industrial base concentrated into one corporation. IG Farben was developing synthetic fuel technology, a process to convert coal into liquid fuel. The Fischer-Tropsch process, named after German chemists who pioneered it. The technology worked, but scaling it to industrial production required expertise IG Farben did not have. They needed refinery design, catalytic cracking processes, high-pressure synthesis techniques. They needed Standard Oil. So Standard Oil and IG Farben formed a partnership. Joint research, shared patents, technology exchange. Standard Oil would help IG Farben build synthetic fuel plants. In return, Standard Oil would get access to IG Farben's chemical patents. Both sides profited, and Germany got something more valuable than money. Energy independence. Between 1930 and 1939, Standard Oil engineers worked directly with IG Farben. They designed refineries, trained German chemical engineers, solved technical problems. By 1936, Germany was producing synthetic fuel at industrial scale. Enough fuel to power the Luftwaffe, enough to motorize the Wehrmacht, enough to make blitzkrieg possible. Without Standard Oil's help, Germany could not have invaded Poland, could not have conquered France, could not have bombed Britain. The numbers tell the story. In 1939, Germany produced 10 million barrels of synthetic fuel. By 1944, that number reached 36 million barrels annually. That fuel powered every German tank, every fighter plane, every submarine. Standard Oil technology made it possible. But there was something else, something even more critical. Tetraethyl lead. This was a fuel additive that dramatically increased engine performance. It prevented engine knocking, allowed higher compression ratios, made aircraft engines 30% more powerful. It was essential for modern fighter aircraft. Without it, planes could not achieve high-altitude performance, could not compete in dogfights, could not carry heavy bomb loads. Standard Oil owned the patents for tetraethyl lead production. They were the only company in the world manufacturing it at scale. It was their most valuable technology. In 1938, Standard Oil licensed tetraethyl lead production to IG Farben. They built a manufacturing plant near Hanover, trained German chemists, provided technical specifications. By 1940, Germany was producing tetraethyl lead independently. That additive powered every Messerschmitt 109, every Focke-Wulf 190, every high-performance German fighter. American pilots were being shot down over Europe by German planes powered by American fuel technology. Standard Oil executives knew exactly what they were doing. Internal memos from 1938 discuss the military applications of tetraethyl lead, legal analysis of export restrictions, strategies to maintain the partnership if war came. They knew war was coming, they planned for it, and they made sure their profits were protected. When Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Standard Oil faced a crisis. Public opinion in America turned sharply against Germany. Trading with Nazis became politically toxic. Standard Oil restructured the partnership, routed everything through neutral countries. Switzerland, Sweden, Spain. The technology transfer continued. The payments continued. After Pearl Harbor in December 1941, direct business with Germany became illegal. Standard Oil faced potential prosecution. So they did what IBM and Ford did: created shell companies, used neutral intermediaries, hid the money trail. The Justice Department investigated in 1942. Senator Harry Truman led a Senate committee inquiry. The evidence was damning. Truman said publicly, quote, "Standard Oil can be considered an enemy of the United States." End quote. The investigation revealed everything: the technology sharing, the patent agreements, the ongoing payments through neutral countries. Standard Oil executives had prioritized profit over national security. The Roosevelt administration faced a dilemma: prosecute Standard Oil and damage one of America's most important corporations, or make a deal. They made a deal. Standard Oil agreed to share all patents with the U.S. government. No restrictions. They paid a $50,000 fine. $50,000 for enabling the Nazi war machine. No executive went to jail. No one was charged with treason. The company continued operating. After the war, Standard Oil became Esso, then Exxon. Today, ExxonMobil is worth over $400 billion, built on a foundation that includes profits from fueling Nazi Germany. They have never apologized, never acknowledged the full extent of their partnership with IG Farben. The documents remain buried in corporate archives. Here is what makes this story so devastating from an economic perspective. These companies were not passive bystanders. They were not innocent businesses caught in a bad situation. They were active, essential participants in the Nazi economy. Without IBM, The German bureaucratic state could not have operated at the scale it did. Without Ford, the Wehrmacht could not have motorized as quickly. Without Standard Oil, the Luftwaffe would have been grounded. These companies provided critical infrastructure for genocide and total war. And they did it for profit. The total revenue these three companies generated from Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945. Over $1 billion in 1940-era currency. That is $20 billion today. $20 billion in blood money. And when the war ended, they faced no consequences. The Nuremberg trials prosecuted Nazi industrialists. 24 IG Farben executives were tried. 13 convicted. Some received prison sentences. But the American companies? They walked free. They kept their profits. They rebuilt their reputations. They became symbols of American capitalism. Why? Because prosecuting them would expose an uncomfortable truth. The American economy had been deeply integrated with the Nazi economy. Hundreds of American companies did business with Germany before and during the war. Going after IBM, Ford, and Standard Oil would open Pandora's box. It would force examination of countless other corporations, banks that held Nazi gold, chemical companies that supplied materials, manufacturers that built equipment. The political cost was too high. The economic disruption would be massive. So the government made a calculation. Bury it, classify it, let it fade from memory. And for 60 years it worked. The story disappeared. A few historians wrote about it. Some researchers published papers. But mainstream America forgot. It was not until the late 1990s that lawsuits and Freedom of Information Act requests forced these companies to open their archives. What emerged was a complete picture of corporate collaboration with Nazis. IBM released a statement saying the findings were painful. Ford acknowledged Ford Works' use of forced labor. Both expressed regret. Neither apologized. Standard Oil, now ExxonMobil, said nothing. To this day, they have never publicly addressed their partnership with IG Farben. These companies are still here, still powerful, still shaping the global economy. IBM is worth over $200 billion. Ford, $50 billion. ExxonMobil, $400 billion. They won. Completely. Totally. Absolutely. They profited from Hitler. They profited from the Allies. They survived the war. They faced no accountability. And they built empires on blood money. This is not ancient history. This happened within living memory. Some World War II veterans are still alive. Some survivors still remember. The documentary evidence is overwhelming. And yet these companies have never been held accountable. They paid small fines, issued carefully worded statements, hired public relations firms, moved on. American capitalism protected them. The government protected them. And history tried to forget them. But we should not forget. Because this story teaches us something critical about corporate power. When profit conflicts with morality, profit wins. Every time, without exception. These were not rogue executives. These were not isolated incidents. This was systematic, calculated, profit-driven collaboration with a genocidal regime. And it was legal. That is what makes it so terrifying. They did not break any laws until America entered the war. And even then, they restructured to maintain plausible deniability. The system protected them. Capitalism rewarded them. And America forgot them. If this story shocked you, if it made you angry, if it made you question what you thought you knew about corporate responsibility, then you understand why we tell these stories. This is hidden history. Economic warfare. The invisible battles that shaped the world we live in today. Hit that subscribe button. Because next week, we are covering Operation Bernhard. the Nazi counterfeiting operation that printed £134 million in perfect British currency, an economic weapon that almost collapsed the